What's up, boys and girls, Lambo here, and in today's video I will be talking about the grand finals that happened yesterday. So I'm going to bring you guys another tournament analysis video. This final was in the DreamHack's LastChance tournament between Serral and Trap. So we're going to analyze the strategies of both players, what either of them could have done a little bit better in the games that they lost, or in the games that they won, really. And I hope I can teach you guys a thing or two, because this covered a lot of very standard openers, and we pretty much saw how ZVP looks right now. Overall, I'm gonna skip two games. One of them was the German Taxi, because I mean I do have a German Taxi tutorial, so we don't really need to look at Serral beating Trap with it. And the other one was the game on Death Aura, where Trap went 2 Stargate Void Ray into Archon High Templar, and Serral didn't have the cleanest early game, and then tried to bust him with Hydra Bane, very similar to the Oxide game, but Serral just played a little bit worse. Also, Death Aura is the worst map for this Hydra Bane attack, so I will completely skip those two games. So we're going to take a look at, spoiler alert, 5 out of 7 games, the grand finals ended up 4-3 for Trap. So this was game 2, I believe. The first one was the German Taxi one. So Serral went for a 12 pool. 12 pool is good on the short maps, so Lightshade, Submarine, and Jagannatha. All 3 of those also don't have a ramp leading up to into the natural, which is nice. So they kind of want to wall with 3 big buildings to have not a ton of surface area. Trap actually messed up and didn't get the block on the natural, so this is already pretty good for Zerg, because this will arrive here right away. Very interesting wall from Trap, and now Trap goes for a response, which is 2 gate, and he also has both pylons on the wall here, which is a little bit weird. So he didn't want the Cybercore to be exposed at all, and he pulls for 4 probes. I will make a 12 pool tutorial eventually. I don't think I'm gonna make it a free MMR fighter video, because 12 pool is pretty much just a macro opener, really. Although I believe you guys will get a lot of free wins with it. But basically the idea is you want to hit this with as many units as possible, and since there is no Cybercore in front of this, it's very easy to hit this even with 6 Zerglings, so this gets low very early on, and because of that, Trap is forced to pull a lot of extra workers. If you see this response, you can just go back into nothing and you're actually fine. In general, especially once you only have 8 Zerglings, even out in the open, I don't think you should fight the 2 Zealots and the 4 probes against a good player. So Serral already lost 1 Zergling, right? Against a probe, so that's good. He got a probe. And now he stays a little bit too long, but he gets the surround. He thinks this is good, but overall, I think killing the Zealots is nice if you get a good trade with it, but like pretty much just even resources lost. So if you lose all your Zerglings for both Zealots, I already don't think that's worth it anymore. If you lose, let's say, 3 Zerglings per Zealot, I think it's okay. But you really need to get away with the rest of the Zerglings. In general, after he got the probe, I would have loved for him to just go back. He knows 2 Adepts are about to spawn. And if he actually got away with 9 Zerglings out of 10, he would be in a phenomenal position. Trap went 3 Pylon before Nexus, and he went for 4 Adepts, which I think is an awful follow-up against 12 pool. I think it's really bad. Now, Serral actually tried to get his Zerglings by here, and he actually made a little bit of a mistake. I'm not sure why his second Overlord is not here yet, but I think it's supposed to be here already. So maybe he tried to hide it, or maybe he went to the natural first to check for a cannon rush because he didn't get blocked. I think must have been one of those. Either way, usually the Overlord is supposed to see this, and this is really what made the early game a little bit more difficult for him. Usually with 12 pool, you don't want to remake as many Zerglings. So yeah, he splits off the Zerglings to try and save one, but he only has 1 out of the first 10 Zerglings left. But his opponent's going for 4 Adepts. Like, I really think 4 Adepts is not viable whatsoever as a response to 12 pool. The 4 Adepts do the same stuff the 2 Adepts do. If you force like an extra pair or 2 of links, that's not worth the 2 extra Adepts before the Nexus. The Nexus is insanely delayed. We can see he doesn't have a second gas. So there's no tech that Serral needs to worry about at all. I think this is just a very bad response. If you ever see this, Always go for 4 queens. In general, if your opponent goes 2-gate, zealot, zealot, adept, adept. As I told you guys, I wouldn't usually commit, especially if they also pull some probes. So just go always 4 queens against that if you're 12 pulling, and that's exactly what Serral is doing. But he had to make a lot of extra zerglings, so... The thing is, even though he made like 14 extra links, 16 extra links, which is 8 less drones than usual. Now, if he did this and he didn't lose any of the zerglings, so if he escaped with 9, that would be like 4 or 5 extra drones, which is huge at this point in time. But he's still ahead just because what Trap is doing is just not good. He also didn't get blocked, which is really nice, so he could go hatch before queen. He actually almost didn't get the hatch down. If you cancel the queen and then don't get the hatch down barely, that actually would have... You guys would have seen a funny reaction from Serral. I didn't really look too much into that, but yeah, since Trap messed up the block, this is where they ended up in terms of positioning in the game. And you don't really need to worry about taking an early third base. Already you're ahead in workers if they go for this 4 adapt response. This is just how it will go. Usually Zerg overtakes Protoss at a later point in time with workers. And he already has 4 queens, so he doesn't need any spores against potential oracles. So this is just overall a really nice position for Zerg to play in. Protoss has no tech. The oracle is super late. He's running away with the overlords. There's not even a void ray. So we're looking at a game where Serral is playing from ahead. Keep this in mind. I know Twitch chat was already whining a lot after the second game because the Zerg was winning, right? Talking about how imbalanced PvZ still is, but it's a little bit hard for non-pro gamers to see that this is not a good early game for Protoss. Because it looks like, right, he defended and killed a lot of Zerglings for free. And then he got across the map and forced out a lot of Zerglings. Now why is Zerg still in a good position? It's just because the Protoss build is bad. Straight up, it's bad. I think he did that because he felt like it would be smart to do if you kill a bunch of Zerglings. Maybe. I'm not sure. I think you should always get the Nexus after the first 2 adepts. So those are just my 2 cents on it, and he will do it later on as well. On Submarine, we're going to take a look at that, where I like his response a lot better than on this game. So Trap decides to go on to Stalker Sentry, and Serral took the forward base. I think this was only because the Adept Zealot stuff was here, so if the Adept Zealot stuff was here, obviously you push out with the Queens and the Creep, so they need to decide on denying one of the 2 bases. Most of them will deny this one, you take this one. And this transitions really nicely into Swarm Host because you have more forward creep spread. You have a nice forward position, and then he just goes into Roach Ravager Swarm Host Queen, which is pretty much an all-in. So we're gonna see how that plays out. So he goes for this Overlord drop, which gets spotted. Serral goes a delayed Overlord speed quite often to check. Like, the main idea behind this, by the way, is to only see if it's a Sky Toss opening, so multiple Stargates. This is not actual Sky Toss, but the 2 Stargate Void Ray, 3 Stargate Void Ray, 2 Stargate Phoenix, any of that. He wants to see that for sure. And if it's anything else, he pretty much goes Roach Ravager Swarm Host Queen all in on the short maps, especially. So the idea behind this is one of the best maps for it as well. This map pool has a lot of very good maps for Swarm Host. It has Lightshade, Oxide, Submarine, and Jagannatha. Those are 4 out of 7. And you can also play it on Romanticide. I'm forgetting one map. Pillars is... You can also theoretically play it on Pillars. Pillars that are not good for Swarm Host, but if you get very good at that style against like Oracle into any ground, I believe you can beat a lot of Protosses with it. So he was a little bit too hesitant here to use force fields. I believe against Stalker Sentry you should always use like 4 Swarm Hosts right away to get past the force field, so the opponent has to kite back. Which he did now, but he lost a couple of Ravages for free, which wasn't great. So this was a good, very, very good initial defense from Trap. Defending very forward. He has a lot of stasis wards here as well. And now the idea on this map is you have your Swarm Host packed here, and you can go to the natural and the main. And if they have all their units here, you can go to the third with your main army and put your locust somewhere else to delay the opposing army. But usually what's going to happen is your opponent will have his army here, you send the locust to the main or the natural, try to kill economy. Just try to get good trades in general, even if it means you get a shield battery and a pylon here, or maybe you can amp our robo, or maybe you can get a robo that's mispositioned here or something. Anything really is fine. And he gets a stasis ward here, which was huge. That actually almost saved stats in this game. And stats, as I said before, he's going for Blink Stalker, and he's actually going for Colossus. I believe if he actually went for Disruptors, he would have had a chance this game. I'm not sure why he made Colossus. Colossus take longer, and Disruptors are really good against this all-in, because... well, I actually please do not just quote me out of context on this. Are better than Colossus. Disruptors are better than Colossus against this. If you can get a lot of Disruptors out, they're good against this. I don't actually think going Disruptors is good against this. So I hope I don't get quoted for that, because Disruptors themselves are not, I think, the correct response against this. So yeah, he jumps in here with the oracles. I think that's also a big mistake. I think just making more stasis wards would be nice. He thinks he can clear it right now, but since Serral used the first couple of swarm hosts to just go above the force fields, he has another wave ready right now, and the oracles are just dying. So this was a massive mistake by Trap. Stasis wards are very, very big. Like this fight, there's a lot of stuff you need to micro, and you need to change your screen all the time, right? I can zoom out, but the players can't. So as a Zerg player, it's very, very hard to, it's very, very easy rather to miss a stasis ward and land your locust there, as we saw before. And if there's another wave that lands to the locust, maybe Trap holds, because this is very well fortified. He has a cannon here. If he has the 2 Colossus in time, that would help him a lot. So stasis wards in general are great for oracles. Even using the beam to kill locusts can be good. But using the oracles against the queens was pretty much just a sacrifice, so that was a massive mistake, and now he rallies the Colossus wrong. So the Colossus dies, and here he kind of dies. You also might notice that Serral only made 10 swarm hosts. This is like pretty much a full all-in. You pull all your queens with this. Let's look, he has 0 queens at home. You should have remade a couple of them already. So you stack some injects, you go to the front, and then you just try to hit as hard as possible with like between 8 and 14 swarm hosts with this, I think is good. And you just try to win with the first 2, like you just try to snowball, so you try to do damage with every wave while trading, and it's very, very hard for the Protoss to force the waves further back. Like if you go for a less committed swarm host version with more drones, it's a lot easier for the Protoss to come out here, fight, force the locust, and then once the locusts are expired, you do the same thing over and over again, whereas with this you have a lot more staying power as a Zerg. So this is the theory behind it. And these locusts are getting very good trades here because the stalkers are not microed, since Trap is microed on the left side. How long is this game? Okay, it's 3 minutes longer. Trap at this point is dead. Yeah. The best part was, if you look at this Nexus, it survived with 3 HP. And then Serral went for a roach run by, and then you can see in Trap's cam the reaction that he's actually upset. As if you didn't know that this actually would happen. Like this would always Serral was gonna get that Nexus. There is no way you can deny that from him when he's playing Roach Swarm Host at 1 HP Nexus. So yeah, I think Trap will go for it, or try to go for a counter attack and try to kill him. But Serral will hold it quite easily even without the Locust. So yeah, this was game 1. Just to remember, Serral kind of messed up with the links in the early game. First with a little bit of the engagement, even though that was fine-ish against the Zealot, where he lost a couple more Zerglings than you would like to. The second mistake was trying to get a run by where he didn't really know where the adapts were, so the rest of the links got caught, and that meant he had to go for a lot of extra links. Trap's biggest mistake was going for 4 adapts before Nexus. That's just bad. Always. Unless you know for sure the Zerg is trying to go for a 3rd hatch with 2 queens, but as a Zerg you only do that if you like get the adapt or something, or if you get a gateway so you can't have multiple adapts, or if you get a Zealot and you know he only has an adapt or 2. So 12 pull is very reactive to what the Protoss does and how much damage you get done. So let's go into the next game. This one was a very interesting one, because this was the first time Trap in the series went for the 2 Stargate Void Ray. which is obviously his go-to in standard macro games. And Serral tried to go 5 Muta into what was supposed to become a Corruptor, Roach, Ravager, Queen timing. Which Koreans tried this a bunch, the Corruptor timings. It didn't look super great, but sometimes it worked. And I actually really like the 5 Muta, adding the 5 Mutas in before that, because I think a lot of Protoss will start making Phoenix, which, like, every minerals and gas they spent on something that is not ground units with this will make the push that eventually will arrive at their fort base so much harder to hold. One thing that with this style I'm not sure about is what happens if the Protoss just doesn't get a fort base. That I don't know what you're supposed to do as Zerg. Like, I actually don't think this is the correct way to play against two-target warrior, but it's something that the Koreans did a little bit. So this game, Chop went for a block. Serral went Cryptomer in the main, injected the third. I will make a video about what you're supposed to do when you get blocked as well at some point, after all the normal early game guides. In general, I want to bring out the early game guides very soon so I can reference them. But it's very normal to get your inject at the front and the Cryptor in the main base. Or a double inject, which I also like. And I think that's what I'm going to tell you guys to do, because you guys will just forget about this creep tumor, one tumor in. So yeah. So what Serral saw so far was a Void Ray, and then an early third base. Two Adepts are trying to roam around. This can still mean that there's like a little bit of a later Glaives timing. So this Roach Warren is for safety reasons. You need a lair, obviously, no matter what you're gonna do. This is very, very standard. Yeah, Serral actually still goes for 3 queens always, even against wide ray openers. I'm not the biggest fan of that. I think you can get away with one for quite some time, and the second one if you realize they go for more than 2 Stargate units that initially fly across the map. So he actually did not see that Void Ray, but he sees a Shield Beater and 2 Adepts. Usually, if Chop goes standard, he always warps in sentries, so at this moment in time, I'm pretty sure Serral thinks about mostly 2 Stargate Void Ray. What you do as Zerg at this moment is just drone up to 66, and he's going for a Spire. So this is also completely fine, obviously, against... this is completely fine against... What did I want to say? Anything that's not 2 Stargate Void Ray. So you can play Roach, Ravager, Lingbane, Muta against any normal openers. So now he knows it is multi Void Ray opener, and I'm not sure why he got this Infestation Pit. I actually didn't ask him. This seems very weird to me. I'm also not sure why he's getting melee upgrades. Maybe he didn't know right away that it was Stargate, and he just opened as if this was a normal opener. Because I would think that if you play this timing, well, maybe he didn't actually plan on going for a timing, he just wanted to play a macro game with Ravager, Lingbane, Corruptor, or something like that, into Hive. We didn't end up seeing his plan because he kind of just died. But yeah, usually you would go for the missile upgrade if you wanted to go for the timing that I was talking about. I did not notice that he went for melee upgrades when I first watched it. Like, this is the first time I'm going through these replays. So far I only watched it live. So yeah, he starts with the 5 Mutas. These are obviously to try and kill some probes. 5 Mutas is the magic number to one-shot workers, so it makes a lot of sense to go for them. Now Chop is going for this move out, which he has done before a couple of times, with 2 Archons and 6 Charge Lots and 6 Void Rays. And I believe if Serral just made Roaches instead of Corruptors, he would have been completely fine, even though he went to 80 drones. I think 80 drones is completely fine. He had such a good number of queens, 9 queens, he all brought them to the front. But he made these Corruptors first instead of the Roaches. I think he completely underestimated this attack. So he saw the move out here briefly, and now he sees there's a... He didn't look straight away, and now he's making Roaches as he's being attacked. So he has 0 Roaches right now, and now he's just starting to make Roaches. And even though 9 Queens take a very long time for this set of units to kill, Queens don't actually do damage against ground units, believe it or not. They're only good against air, so... Chop just engages and kind of kills him accidentally, pretty much. While making some Phoenix at home against the Mutas. The Mutas actually committed on the cannon and killed it, because they're not big microed. But Serral just died and he GG'd out. So I believe I would have loved to see what happened if Serral just made roaches. I think he completely missed the move out and then made corruptors here. Obviously, you don't need the corruptors right away because the queens are enough to deal with the void race. So you want to go some roach queen first if you guys want to copy this. I think this might be a way of playing against void ray into ground. Although I do not believe I would suggest any diamond players or below especially to copy this, because a lot of Protoss players will just keep making void rays. Whereas on high level they're gonna switch after like 6 to 8 void rays into Forged Twilight, Storm +1. So interesting stuff here. Trop pretty much did what he wanted to do, but Serral got completely caught off guard, so not the nicest game. Let's see what the next one will be. The next one will be on Lightshade, which this time he didn't 12 pull. Where was Lightshade again? Let's see. It's a 9-minute game. Right, okay. So this game was another one of those games where the Korean Protoss messed up a lot in the early game, just with the build order choices. A lot of Korean Protoss versus foreign series will start, especially on the short maps, will start with Koreans not knowing how to deal with early pulls, because Koreans just don't 12 pull that much, and they basically never pull first. So Serral, after seeing that there's a probe, decided to go for a pull first, and then he was hoping the probe would go to the third base, and then he can sneak a hatchery here. But the probe barely went back in time to block that hatchery, so he needed to go pull first. With taking the third base, and the thing that Trap did wrong here, just straight up it's a mistake, is he saw there is one Zergling on the way. By the timing he should also know that this is not the earliest pull. So he went Nexus before Cybercore, which is good. A lot of Korean Protosses would make this wrong already. But at this moment in time, you're supposed to get a gas and then a pylon. Whereas Trap is getting a zealot. Which you don't need. You do not need a zealot. So he's getting the pylon before the gas. So this gas is insanely late, which hurts his early game a lot. No matter what his plan before is, I can tell you right now that no matter what he does, it's completely delayed for no reason, pretty much. And then on top of that, he goes for a second gateway and a shield battery. Little cut. My microphone actually, my cord went out of the mic. My mic is a little bit broken. So I wanted to say that he did not need to make a shield battery because he wasn't up against gas pull hatch. Only against gas pull hatch you ever need this blind shield battery because the speed finishes, so you can't scout with the adapt. In this scenario, if he just sends forward the first adapt, even though that was chasing the Zerglings for a little bit, to be fair, he still would have had plenty of time to check the mineral line here and then go back with the adapt and go Stargate. And like this build is just, it's not very good. The build order that he's going for right now. And as I said before, he's lacking gas from where he's supposed to be. Did he chrono boost the gateway research? No, right? He even chrono boosted the Cybercore. I don't know what he wanted to be saying. Like, I really don't know what he would lose against right now. I guess he was afraid of a Ravager Ling Queenolin, like Roach Ravager Ling Queenolin, where they just... Yeah, I'm not sure. I think he thought something was happening here that clearly wasn't, so this overall was good for Serral this early game. Even though he went pull first and took his third base first. Just because the Protoss is worrying about stuff that doesn't exist. And then he's going for an Icon drop, which I think Icon drops are not that great, to be honest, first of all, but especially the thing that he does is really not good. So he got a couple of workers, and right now the worker count is looking fine, but the normal time at which you take a third base is not 5 minutes. But if you're playing Icon drop, you have to delay your third base, and with his early game, it's even later than usual. So the Zerg will be up in economy basically forever. And he decided to go for just 8 gating because of it. I'm not sure if that was his plan initially or not, but this build is just... like, it's really bad against Roach. You can hold this with 66 drones if you have a normal early game. But even if you, like... Serral lost a couple of workers, right? And he went for pull first. You can still hold this with 60 drones. Like, this build is just awful. I'm very straightforward with this. This build is just bad. Like, as a Zerg, you see there's no third base at 6 minutes. Like, what could it possibly be? You see a War Prism leave the base? Like, you can defend this build after seeing that there is no third base. So as long as you just make roaches, you're completely fine, even if you don't have the greatest early game. So now he takes the Nexus, and now he comes here with the Icons, and Serral is making roaches and a Spinecrawler, and you're gonna see Serral just get very, very far ahead in supply here because the other guy just doesn't have probes mining of a third Nexus, which is how this matchup is supposed to be played. So Serral actually wants to attack here himself now. This is very classic. This is very old school against Icon drop, where or just to simplify StarCraft, you stop at a drone count that you know is higher than your opponent's because he doesn't have a third Nexus, and then you just mass units. And then after a little while, if your opponent doesn't all in, you can just kill him because you were mining more than him, so you will have more units than him. So basically, that is the simplified approach that Serral took here, and it's one that is very, very common back in the day when we had Icon drop builds like this. But Protoss stopped doing them for a reason. And Trap is going to go for this attack now, at the same time at the front and in the main base, but Serral has more than enough units to defend. And then he just counterattacks and kills him. So this is not the most interesting game. Mostly this was just a lot of interesting early game stuff. Like a lot of small things that you guys might not know about. For example, the pool timing as a Protoss is very important, that you know the difference between a 16 pool, 6 links, 14 pool, 17 pool, all of this kind of stuff. As Trap, you see when the pool finishes, there's only one larva that turns into a cocoon. You don't need to make a Zealot, guys. Just go for your normal opener and it's gonna be fine. If you want, you can full wall. If you don't want the 2 links inside your base, that's fine. You can full wall for a second until the Adept is out. Completely acceptable. But what he did was not great. Then the Icon drop 8 gate, also not really that good, to be honest. So even though Serral messed up a little bit against the Adepts and the Oracles, and his drone count wasn't that great, and he went pool first and took his third edge first, he could just simply make roaches in A move. Like, just based off the strategies that both players picked here. So yeah, so this was pretty straightforward. I'm gonna skip this game, and I will talk about it in the 7th game. So we're gonna go straight to map number 6, which is gonna be another 12 pool. So as I said before, usually European Zergs would always get ahead with 12 pool against Koreans, because Koreans had the weirdest responses to 12 pool sometimes. As we saw on Jagannatha with the 4 Adepts, which didn't really seem that great. And also on top of that, Trap messed up this. You always want to put a pylon at the Zerg's natural to delay the Zerglings from running over straight away. So you will see that this delays the Zerglings for quite a bit. So this is like 5 seconds that you just gain by losing 25 minutes, which will make the defense a lot easier. You need to pull the probes later, so that's, since he actually wants to pull probes anyways, you get this back pretty much just from pulling the probes later. Now, one thing that, I'm not sure I should have Protosses here, but usually the gateway that produces the Zealot should be the one that's next to the hole, so I would have preferred seeing the Cybercore here. So if you have the first gateway here, you want the Cybercore here. Because you always, as a Zerg player, if you 12 pull, you attack the building that's the furthest away from the gap. Also, gateways have 100 less HP than Cybercores if you combine health and shield together. So he's forced to engage here again with all of this, and his probes were actually a little bit exposed here, so Serral went for the fight. I probably also would have went for that. But as I said before, if you play against us, I would want you guys to just go back home and do nothing. And this is what happens here. He gets a Zealot and he loses every single Zergling. Yeah, he lost every single Zergling for a Zealot, which is terrible. So this is not a good start. Even if you don't do anything with 12 pull, you're fine if your opponent goes for 2 gate and pulls probes. Like, that's just as simple as it is. This is not the most greedy response from Protoss, it's a very safe one. You're not supposed to get anything. But the reason Serral engaged was because the probes were at the front, so in front of the Zealots, and then Trap microed it back nicely, and then Serral didn't have perfect micro to focus fire any probes down, so he just got the Zealot in the end, which that was not a good trade whatsoever. He needed to remake 10 Zerglings. This is, if nothing happened right now, and this is the attack that Protoss is coming from, with, all you need to do is maybe make one extra pair of links. One. Possibly two, if you really don't trust your Zergling micro. But you can also simply just have 5 extra drones right now, so that's basically what went wrong here in the early game. This was not good, and then Chop completely messed up and accidentally finished a shade. There is no way he wanted to finish this shade, I feel like. Actually, no way. Maybe he didn't look at it. I'm gonna go into his vision. Okay, he actually didn't see all the Zerglings, so maybe this was on purpose. From his vision, it looks like it's 6, right? He sees 5. It's actually 10 Zerglings, though. Where are the other 2 Zerglings? I'm not sure. It's actually hard even for me to see all the Zerglings here. So, so yeah, he shades in here because he killed the Zerglings. This was a massive error, and this kind of made the game semi-even again. So he gets 3 workers here. This is not good though, especially if you're going for glaives. He's still forced to keep his probe here. I also think glaives is a very, very, very bad follow-up if you're playing against 12 pool. I would always pretty much go Stargate first, even though you're on a small map here. So I can understand why he's going for glaives, because probably that's what his plan was all along to do on this map. So he just continued with it. But the reason I don't like this is because Zerg actually, you get up as a 12 pooler, comparatively to how the usual game goes, faster to the 2-base economy, and then you can't drone much further because your 3rd base is later, especially if they go for this 2-gate response. So you actually automatically are at the perfect drone count that you need to stop at for the glaives attack if you see it coming, and even without scouting for it, you're always going to be at that exact perfect drone count. So I'm not the biggest fan of glaives, but it's okay, it's okay. And then Serral lost a couple of extra links right before his speed was done, so that was very bad. Watchpoint is slightly too late. A smidge too late. He's going for a Sport Crawler here, which is for safety reasons, but this is of course not, this is not a DT drop. This was only 6 adapts. If this was 8, Drogo actually said he would have shaded, and I'm pretty sure shading would have been a massive mistake. And he just goes for another warp end instead, which is fine. But you can see that even after that pretty bad early game, Serral can still defend this relatively easily. He's actually playing it super safe with 2 extra spores. If I have a bad early game, or if you guys have a bad early game, it's okay to just sometimes skip the spores and just hope that there's no DTs. DTs is I think it's a good gamble percentage-wise, because DT will be the follow-up of very, very little glaive builds. Maybe right now 5%, I would say, in pro games. That's just a number that I randomly pulled up. I don't know the exact number, but I actually can't remember the last time someone played glaives and then with a DT follow-up, because Zergs haven't really been skipping on the spores. And now he gets 2 queens because the Ravagers were a little bit too late for this. Obviously he also still could have had 2 more adepts if he didn't shade them in here, but then also Zerg would have had 3 more drones, so game would look a little bit different. Now Serral is zoning this out with the Ravagers. I actually thought this was pretty scary because he almost had the range to get to the ramp here, and these Ravagers followed very, very far. Either way, Trap is going for a Robo follow-up, which is probably the most standard, and Serral resumed droning very, very, very late. Now if you're the Zerg in this position, you can drone up completely for free no matter what the follow-up is, pretty much, unless you think it is an Immortal follow-up, which he's scouting for. He sees there's a 3rd Nexus, so he knows he can make a bunch of drones for free now. Catches some adapts for free. Against these types of harass, by the way, just having your Zerglings at home is all you need. Zerglings a lot better at cleaning up adapts fast than Roaches are. And he's gonna go into an early Baning speed. 66 drone Ravager Ling Bane is the end goal. Usually if Protoss does this, they always go for some sort of all-in afterwards. It might be a Colossus +1 Blink Stalk roll-in, which Ravager Ling Bane is very good against. It might be a move out with just the adapts, if they still have adapts left over. He even worked him a couple of extra adapts, not sure why he did that rather than Stalker Sentry. Or something that Trap is doing right now. You go for he just makes 1 Colossus and makes raw gateway units without a Forge or a Twilight, trying to capitalize on his advantage that he had going into this early mid game phase. So now he warps in the Stalkers, and we can already see supply-wise this is not looking that great for Serral. He went to 66 drones, which you're supposed to be able to defend us with 66 drones, but this is where you see that Serral already was behind. Especially for the more casual viewer, it's always very, very hard in StarCraft to see why a game was lost. So for example, because of how the early game went in this one, Serral can't really do much here. But like this might just look like Protoss is broken, whereas if the Zerg has a good late game and then it goes Swarm Host, and he just wins, or I don't know, some Roach Ravjolin, it might look like one race is completely imbalanced. But you guys need to always take these fights that end up happening with a grain of salt, because you might not understand everything that's going on, and you might not be able to judge what the position is supposed to look like if both players play somewhat well. So now Chub just goes in, he has a lot of adapts, there's barely any roaches here. Decent amount of banelings, but good Ravager shot, and he can pretty much just move through this with disruptor shots and a couple of force fields. I don't think there's much Serral could have done here, even if you micro better against the disruptors. So much better of a 12 pull hold, and Trap takes that game pretty easily, I believe. In that point, it's 3-3, right? Yeah, this was game 6, so now we're going to game 7. And I mentioned before, the reason I didn't want to analyze that aura, because you guys also don't like the long videos usually on YouTube, but this is going to be a long one anyways, since it's a 7-game series that we're analyzing here. I felt like it was not really necessary, so we're just gonna take a look at this one instead on Oxide, which was very similar, but the map is actually better for what the Zerg is doing. And on top of that, Serral played a little bit better of an early game. So this game, I think he went for 15 hatch rather. A lot of Zergs do this against Trap, because Trap actually tries, like, he blocks this hatchery at the latest possible time, so he usually arrives here at 47 seconds, which is not early enough to block a 15 hatch. A lot of Protoss players will scout early enough to block this, so this is preparation, basically. This is not something that you should ever do on ladder 15 hatch. And then he always goes pool on the delayed gas. I believe he also did this on pillars, which I didn't watch, but he also on that map went for this 15 hatch and then pool on delayed gas. Speed timing is not that impactful, especially if you don't get your natural blocked. And then he goes in straight away here with the Overlord, and Trap actually went for a Stalker first, which he didn't before. And he almost gets this Overlord. He actually is going to chase the Zergling here. I believe he would have gotten the Overlord, to be honest, if he just walked around here, because he only needed 2 hits. We had a funny part on Harrison's stream where Rainer and Harrison said this wouldn't even be close before the Stalker came out, but I was pretty sure that if you just would shoot the Stalker a couple of times and then run around here, he would get it. Either way, he didn't try to go for it. He could have easily gotten it, by the way, because Serral ended up going here first to completely try and get away from the Void Ray, in case it was Void Ray. And Trap didn't think he would get it anymore, so he stopped chasing. He would have gotten it. So overall, pretty standard openers. Protoss didn't get the block, so that's slightly nice for a Zerg, but that doesn't really matter that much. A 15 hatch is not that much better than getting your hatchery blocked, it's just a little bit better, so it's a nice feeling that you get. And Trap goes for this 4-minute Nexus, then second Stargate and double gas at the natural. Ends up getting 2 Overlords, which is nice. Serral again goes for Lair. Roachborn, this Lair is pretty late. I prefer getting it a little bit earlier than he did this game, and he made a bunch of Zerglings to be safe against these 2 adapts that sometimes Trap tries to sneak across, which is okay as well. He always goes for 3 spores. I don't like this too much, to be honest. This is the one thing in Serral's play that I don't like. The spores can be nice later on against the Void Race, where you can put 2 spores here, for example, and then pull more queens to the front. In general, this you can just defend with good queens splits. And if you have an earlier lair, you also will have Hydras in time if they have so many Void Rays that they can actually start fighting against your queens, if they keep making Void Rays, that is. 3 Stargate Void Ray, by the way, does not actually have more Void Rays out faster. I said this since the beginning when Zest first made this build. I said it right away. No Protoss player, not a single one besides Harrison, believed me. And now this is the standard, which I told them 2 Stargate is way better. I told them from day one, and they didn't believe me, so just a little bit of a history here that of Protoss players not believing in what the other races are telling them. They're just, especially the Europeans, I usually just watch what the Koreans are doing and then copy that more or less. So no trap takes his third base, the storm is almost done. Very, very standard. 66 probe, very late robo. And the idea here as the Zerg is you make a lot of queens early on. You go up to 80 some drones. He's going 82. Maybe he's even going to make a couple more. I think usually you go 7 gas. And you just try to hit with as many banelings as early as possible. And once your Hydra upgrades are done, they're supposed to be done a little bit earlier, but you can even go without the range right away. So what I would do is you would leave 4 queens at home and I would attack with like 5 queens. And the moment my bailing speed is done, I try to engage. I usually also don't get a second evolution chamber. And you don't want more than 20 Hydras. This is the one thing that I think Serral is... that I'm a little bit critical of here for Serral. I actually do not think the Hydra count is what matters. I think the bailing count and the speed of the attack is what matters. If you attack at actually 820 or so, the Protoss won't have a lot of Archons. So they have basically no DPS to force your banelings to be clamped up. So if there are a lot of units, so this might not make sense for you right away. Why would banelings ever need to be clamped up? But you need to come in at the exact same time with banelings if there's a lot of units that have DPS that is ranged, right? For example, against Terran, you want to hit with your banelings from multiple angles, obviously, but you want to come in at the same time. So you can't just run forward and back to dodge storms if there were a lot of Marines here, right? That makes sense. So because the Protoss open with 2 Stargates and many Void Rays, they have no Immortals, no Archons. Their only ranged DPS is cannons and Void Rays if the Void Rays are in hold position. Otherwise, Void Rays will start trying to attack Hydras and Queens. So what you can do is you can pre-split your banelings a lot and then try to come in and even try to dodge storms. And there's not infinite storms here, even though this looks very scary. He needs to use the storms to kill the banelings. Like, he needs to use them. You even need to kind of pre-storm the banelings, otherwise they just run through with 1 HP and they still connect. So I think this is the timing where I think you should hit at 830 already. But Serral made 28 Hydras. I usually prefer between 16 and 20 Hydras. I actually don't think you need that many, and the Queen should already be here poking. And I also think this rock should be down. So there's a bunch of setup that I think could have been better for Serral. Because Trap is not actually on the map at all. Like, if Showdown places, he has a War Prism here, and he has already Zealot Runbys queued up, whereas Trap instead spends all his money on static defense, which is another approach, which I actually don't think this can work on a bunch of maps. So this is one of the maps where it's more possible to defend the fort base. Maps where the fort base is very open, pillars, where I don't think you can hold this. Light Shed, where I definitely don't think you can hold this, not even close. Juggernaut, where I don't think you can hold this. And then Romanticide, if they take the forward fort, it's also pretty easy to kill the fort. So this style here by Serral is designed not to kill the Protoss, but just to kill the fort base. If you just sacrifices it, you're playing late game from way far ahead. Or you just stay on Hydralink bin, you don't really need to go late game. The Protoss won't be able to afford carriers with 6 gas, really. So your entire goal is to attack in here into the fort base. So he kills this rock, which is important to come from more angles. But at this moment in time, he has 20 banelings. And now Hydra speed finishes. Already he's showering a little bit in storms. But this is what he's doing correctly now, is where you just have the queens in the front. But then you want a lot of banelings, so less Hydras, more banelings. Even if he attacked at this moment still with more banelings, I would still like his position more. And especially if he could come in with a flank from here, if these rocks were down. Now you're starting to see that Serral is floating a lot of money. Now he's coming in here with the Hydras. And at this point, I think the Hydras are, again, the banelings are a little bit too far back. They're a little bit, like, this is not the perfect fight. Queens are coming from here, which is okay. But the storms are hitting a lot of the Hydras, and the banelings are mostly just stuck behind. This automatically also splits the Hydras, but it basically all comes down to micro. This is a decent storm as well. Like, Trap is getting big value out of these storms. You can see that the Void Rays are pretty much useless. They go forward and try to fire at the Hydras unless they're hold positioned. So now all these Archons are exposed, he's morphing everything into Archons, but the banelings did not get past to hit this center of shield batteries. So he got a full duration shield battery overcharge here, and now all his banelings are gone because he didn't have any extra banelings morphing. Usually you want consistent baneling morph, so if this What Serral is floating right now would be in his army, which would be impossible because he was max before, and I don't think he had Larva. And he's trying to get ready for a run by. If this was here with Ling Bane right now, at this moment in time, he would just win the game. These High Templars are out of position. You would run in here with the Banelings, kill all the Zealots, and what's left is 1 Cannon, 3 Void Rays, and Oracle the Stalker. And these two High Templars that are coming. So once you can just start being super pre-split against the Storms and you still have some Banelings left over, it's an easy win really from Zerg. So there were a couple of execution mistakes on Serral's end. At this moment he still didn't have any Banelings ready. This move out was extremely risky, I feel like. And at this moment there is still no Archons, and he actually is trying to get into carriers. Usually I would think that Protoss players try to get more cannons first than Archons, but this I guess is also a way to put a heavy timer on the Zerg. So now he has this, which I think is a lot better, this area, but he's still not coming from behind with the Banelings. He does need some Banelings with his army, obviously, otherwise the Zealots would come in here and completely wreck the Hydras, but just having any Baneling flank would be nice. This is very defended from the cannons, right? But at least coming in from here and then pre-splitting would be great. And Trap just defends this very well here. He finally brings... I'm not sure where the sentry is coming from, but I suppose it was probably at the natural, where there is nothing right now. And at this moment in time, you don't just play late game. You can try to play late game, but if you start going into Hive by the time your opponent already has carriers, you're not going to have a great time. We don't even play late game from an even position, so we definitely shouldn't when we're behind. And now he just tries to run through, and you can see that now that there's cannons, Archons, Immortals, and more units, these Banelings die even if they don't get finished by a storm, so you can be a little bit more careful with the storms, but at this moment in time it's over. And Trap held this pretty much perfectly. But just to explain you guys the general idea of why this would work, even though it looked like the series it didn't. There were some execution mistakes. He had great crew spread. This game he also defended his forward base very nicely and droned up a lot earlier than Death Aura. So he had a better timing. But the general idea is that if you come pre-split with Banelings from everywhere, the Protoss can't really do anything. Like, let's say he had 8 storms. We can look at the exact number of storms he had for the fight. It must have been around 8. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we have a bunch of extra storms all coming soon. But these don't actually matter, these extra storms, because you go for a full-on engagement, and eventually the Banelings are supposed to break through towards the High Templars. Like, the only High Templars that are super close to getting, like these ones are pretty close. Right, you need 150 energy for a second storm. Yeah, the other ones... Yeah, the closest we got are these 2 High Templars here. Usually these don't really come into play. If you hit a little bit earlier, you just fully commit with the Queens. You don't really ever need to run back, and then you just come in with the Banelings. If you move out a little bit earlier, I don't think it's actually a problem to wait for killing this rock as well. So... nice games overall. I think that final was a lot of fun, and it really showed what is meta right now. If the Protoss is not going for a Void Race, the meta is going for a Swarm Host. A lot of 12 pooling, especially in the short maps, is very strong. Usually against Glaives you want to go Ravager Bane, at least the European Zergs do that. So there was one game of that. Then against 2 Stargate Void Ray, if you want to play macro, you go for a Hydra Bane Blast usually, or try to go for a Lurker Timing. That's the other thing that you can try. And we also saw German Taxi, so in general just a lot of aggressive Zerg stuff is the meta right now, and we saw that. And a pretty close finals. It honestly could have gone either way. It's very exciting to see a lot of different tournament winners, because that means that for Katowice, it basically means that there's a lot of title contenders, right? If you ask me who's the favorite to win, is Trap now the favorite to win just because he won this very last map, which was super close? I think Serral is the favorite, but Trap probably close behind, and there's a bunch of other, like Dark, for example, look great in TSL, but is he the favorite because of that? Probably not. But none of the players, I would say, has a higher percentage than at best 20 to actually win the tournament, because there are so many players that are on a similar level and everyone's getting there. And now they're all really starting to ramp up their practice. So I'm really looking forward to Katowice, that's all I wanted to say with this. And I'm sorry if you sometimes see a hole in my head. That's because my lighting is terrible in my room. I will get new lights to fix this. So I know you guys will probably mention this in the comments again. I hope you guys enjoyed this. This is a longer format usually, this tournament analysis, especially if I go over all the games. I just wanted to do this since it's super recent. Hope you guys enjoyed it. See you guys in the next video. Bye bye.